Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight for Liberty. I am your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about the men and women out here making the world a freer place through politics, activism, journalism, business, and so many more things. And we're coming at you live on the Free Speech Media Network, bringing you the stories, conversations, and events that the old corporate media just won't do. It's our mission here on the show to give you some hope for the movement and the future while bringing you actionable advice and inspiring stories to help you get out there and fight for liberty yourself. And if you're watching this on our YouTube stream, we appreciate you, but we'd appreciate you a little bit more if you go down into that description, click the link, and go watch this over on Rumble. They pay us a little bit better, and they aren't taking down my videos like YouTube has been doing. So go on over. Definitely make sure that you're following the channel on Rumble as well so that you don't miss out on anything. And like I said, it helps support the channel a little bit more. So definitely super appreciate it. Tonight, we have a representative of Project Liberal coming on the show. But before we bring him up, we are going to hear a few words from some of our wonderful sponsors. First and foremost, our oldest and our most trusted sponsors, Blood of Tyrants Wine, the official spirit of 1776. If you're looking for a nice night in while sipping on the blood and tears of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. Choose between a smooth Merlot or sweet Pinot Grigio or both. Distributed by activists you know and love, bloodoftyrants.wine is the place to go. You can use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order. Or you can kickstart your day with their Energy Tea Liquid Freedom. It's a healthy yerba mate blend with a nice kick of raspberry that will have you refreshed and energized to go out there and fight for liberty all day long. All of this is available at bloodoftyrants.wine, or you can click the link in the description. Again, use promo code FSM to get that 10% off. Go on over and check them out. I'm a huge fan of the tea. I had a can in my hand all the time at LibertyCon, and it is the main thing that kept me alive. So definitely go check them out. Next up is MyArkit. Save your digital legacy for generations. Don't just save your pictures where they're at risk of being censored, deleted, or lost. MyArkit gives you security and privacy at a great price while telling the whole story in your own voice and writing. Unlike a cloud backup to just dump all of your random pictures, MyArkit has you upload one full memory at a time. So a picture or short video post with a text and or audio caption create a timeline that makes going back through your memories an easy and pleasant experience for you and your loved ones. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial today and see what this craze is all about. No payment info necessary. This is an actual free trial. So go to myarkit.com, use promo code FSM to help support the channel and get a discount when you do sign up. Again, that's myarkit.com, promo code FSM. You can sign up for a personal account to save your life forever, or if you have an important event coming up, you can create an event account. This will let attendees add photos and videos for you and other admins to go through later and curate a beautiful digital album for your upcoming wedding, convention, graduation, or shower. MyArkit.com is the place to go to learn more. Again, promo code FSM. And last but not least, our newest sponsor, and the one I am the most excited about adding on recently, because of my good friends over at Shroom, all-in-one grow bags. Growing shrooms now radically simple. Effortlessly grow higher quality shrooms wherever you like. No tubs, no tents, no dedicated grow clean space. No mycology experience required. Like us, mushrooms breathe oxygen in and CO2 out, and their unique filter strips provide significantly better fresh air exchange, a superior way to let CO2 out and establish a fortress against mold and bacteria. The process is simple. Just inject your preferred liquid culture into the grow bag, put the bag on a shelf and wait, and then harvest your own homegrown mushrooms. You can order yours today at shroomgarden.com. And again, promo code FSM. This is going to save you $5 on your first order over there. So that's SHRUM garden.com, promo code FSM. Definitely go check them out. It's a great product. It is one of the easiest and most inexpensive ways to get high quality shrooms in your house. Definitely go check them out. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight, representing the Project Liberal Steering Committee, the one and only Mr. Tommy Creuzer. Welcome to the show, good sir.
Hello, glad to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you on. So as I said earlier, I always like to start off the show with a little bit of like a testimonial kind of origin story question. So I'm wondering what first got you familiar with the Liberty movement and brought you in?
Honestly, I was kind of like this sort of centrist sort of person. I was starting to almost become more like apolitical. Then I sort of started to find sort of the libertarian sphere. It was actually a lot of paleo-libertarians like Mentis Wave that first sort of introduced me to libertarianism. But overall, it developed more into more of like a classical liberalism over time. And that's when I started to find Project Liberal.
Okay. So easy segue there. Tell me a little bit about Project Liberal. What are you guys about?
Well, we're a coalition that believes authoritarianism is on the rise, and both on sort of the right and the left, it's been like surging. Both sort of the MAGA movement, but also the sort of far left movement that has really started grit the whole political process. And our sort of deal is to uphold individual rights and create a coalition around that.
Okay, I like that. How do you go about coalitioning all these various groups that have been fighting with each other for so long?
It's a bit tough. I would say a lot of it has to do with that right now we're figuring out a core liberal message that we want to get out there, as well as we're working on various projects. Like we have a liberalism scorecard that we want to write everyone in Congress with. Right now, it's been a little roadblock due to funding, but assuming that we can get the funding, we'll be able to have everyone in Congress rated on both their liberal policy and their liberal rhetoric.
Okay, I like that. I like that it's two different things, because there are definitely some people that I really like for their rhetoric, even though their policy might not actually match up in the way that I would like it to. But just saying certain things being a full of shit politician still does us some benefit if they're helping convince other people that they should believe these things also. And then when you show them that their voting doesn't quite match up, then you can establish that problem with the voter you're trying to reach, later on down the road. But when Trump says we need to audit the IRS, like, I don't care if he does it or not at this point. Like, he's already done a big service to the movement by getting millions of people to go, oh, yeah, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should audit the Fed too.
Yeah, of course. And it also sort of works in the inverse, because there are some people that may have pretty good voting records, but they may end up saying stuff that could imply authoritarian actions in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. Definitely, I think Vivek definitely falls into that category most of the time.
Yeah.
He's not too bad on the actual policy he has a chance of getting done in like a term, but some of his rhetoric is terrifying.
Oh yeah, I heard some of his sort of foreign policy stuff. It's like almost a little scary.
Yeah. Luckily, Governor of Ohio has very little foreign policy say, so I'm pretty okay with him if he were to win the Republican nomination there. I'm okay with that one.
That's fair.
So what are some like measurable goals that you guys have that you're looking for in the next, 3 to 5 years?
Well, a lot of it probably has to do with funding. We want to have the funding to be able to sort of make these sort of actions, like make the scorecard and get our messaging out there, and sort of bring a liberal sort of across the spectrum that have been sort of dispersed in multiple parties into one banner.
I like that. It helps that it's not. I'm not intentionally throwing anybody under the bus here, but it helps that it's not a party of its own. That you can be in whatever party that you want, and then working with this pack to advance these goals. Whether the stepping out of a major party with actual influence and power into the Libertarian Party might be, not something that someone wants to do right away, but they can ease into the movement in the world and working towards liberal or libertarian goals through PACs and a few other nonprofits and different like single issue coalition groups. You see a lot of that with like MAPS and Normal and some of these other extremely libertarian groups that are successful because they allow Democrats and Republicans to help them. And the party, whether that be the LP or Keystone or the Liberal Party or even the Green Party, all of these other third parties can't overcome that one, because you can't be a sitting Republican and help the Libertarian Party. That would be wrong, just like it's wrong to do it the other way around.
Yeah, as well as we definitely something that we want to do is to make sure to get the voting system reformed, so you don't have to worry about that as much.
Mm-hmm. What is do you guys have a preferred style of voting, like star or ranked choice or anything like that? Okay.
But I know that one of the people in our sort of steering committee, I know he very much prefers approval voting, Micah Irfan. Okay. But otherwise, it's like, for most of us, it's like anything's better than first past the post.
Right. Literally almost everything is better than that. There's a few ways to do it worse, but not many. I'm not a big approval voting fan, but I even still agree that would be better than what we're working with right now.
Yeah, though it is important to remember a lot of the sort of voting system have trade-offs, at least versus each other.
Yeah,
approval voting makes it very easy to sort of count and understand what's happening. Mm-hmm. Like star voting is like a significant increase in complexity. When it comes to explaining to a voter what it does. Or there are other ones that sort of do like a round robin sort of system where it sort of just does these 1v1s. No voters are going to understand it. It's probably going to create a really good winner that everyone kind of likes, but it simply won't work because you can't explain it to voters.
Yeah, the idea of having to go in and vote multiple times or just have multiple 1v1 votes on the ballot or something like that. The only way that works is by explaining to people that it's basically March Madness, and then your average low information voter might actually be able to grasp it. But yeah, I'm a gun to my head, if I have to pick a favorite, it's definitely star voting. But I agree there are definitely some trade-offs with that. It is one of the. I don't think the explaining it to the voters is a huge hurdle compared to like ranked choice. Because if anything, give it a 5, like what between 1 and 5 star review is something that everyone can kind of is used to with Yelp and Google Maps and everything else. Where even just being able to count 1 through 5 and making sure that you don't write 2 twice or something like that, unfortunately, is just as much of a hurdle. But I think it has the better outcome of most of the systems versus.
Yeah, as a voter, I would definitely say star voting is probably my favorite.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest hurdle with that one is the infrastructure of being able to count it correctly, preferably electronically, at least in a first round of counting, so that we can get through, some of the big, like especially like national races quickly, uh, and just fitting it all onto a ballot. Going from one bubble to 5 takes up a lot of room that people don't think about.
Yeah, and it'd probably also, I honestly think it's probably going to end up being like a sort of mixed system where different elections have slightly different rules.
Mm-hmm.
So that also may be a bit of a confusion for some people.
Yeah,
because they may get like used to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, they may get used to like star voting, but then kind of want it for everything. But there may be elections where that just isn't going to be the case.
Mm-hmm. It was a big issue in New York City. They passed ranked choice voting, and everyone, all of the, I don't want to keep insulting just average voters, but the lower half of the IQ section of voters, that just kind of show up and vote every once in a while and get your news from the local 5 o'clock, half hour, and that's about all that they pay attention to. And then Facebook, most of those people were convinced that it had just passed for all elections. Like they were just going to have to learn ranked choice voting and do it for everything. And there was a full cycle and a half between passing it and there even being municipal elections in New York for the ranked choice voting to be in existence yet. So everybody showed up in, I think it would have been like 22 in November to vote for, Senate and Congress and everything, expecting it to be ranked choice voting, and then it wasn't. And that caused almost as many problems as it showing up next year for the municipal elections caused, with people not knowing how to do it. It was mayhem. And a bunch of people, I thought we passed this. What happened? Was I lied to? And, just so many people just brains broke. And I was watching it all over, social media and even like mainstream media, like interviews with just people at the polls and stuff. It was genuinely a really funny thing to watch happen. But because most of the right-wing media went nuts when it passed, like, oh, they ruined elections, it's going to be fucked, it's going to be so confusing, and they made it seem like it was for everything.
Yeah, I really hate how sort of right-wing media, they'll try to make out like election reform as some sort of like socialist trick that'll just turn your city magically into California.
Right.
I mean, it's already New York City, though. I mean,
yeah, there is an objective reality to, the more people that are allowed to vote, the more Democrats win those elections, which I do find kind of funny. You can just say that that's a huge indictment on the Republican Party. But just the looser the voting rules are, the more likely that that region, or what's the word I'm looking for?
The sort of
jurisdiction is to go blue. And so Democrats are almost always pushing like just blanket get out the vote campaigns in November, because they just know that if they get out the vote, they're more likely to win, regardless of who they're actually talking to, which I think is very interesting.
The weird thing, though, is that didn't work in 24. A ton of people voted in 24 that did not vote in 2020, and that did not work.
That is very true. This one was a weird one, but what I also find, Biden was just such a god awful candidate that he couldn't pull in those votes. They won almost every swing state's Senate race.
Yeah, which is interesting.
the only state that went the other way around was New Hampshire, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a interesting sort of thing to see. I definitely think they should have had an open primary for the Democrats, and they would have gotten a much better candidate.
Yeah, I just totally misspoke because it was Harris by the end of it.
I mean, it works
not
both
awful
ways.
candidate. Yeah,
it's
still
just
awful.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like I voted for Kamala Harris. I voted for Jace Oliver. I'm not gonna pretend like.
Yeah, as did I. Unfortunately, I had to write him in on my ballot.
Oh, same. I'm in Illinois. I actually volunteered to sort of do the write-ins.
Nice.
Just because I was just like, I was at that point kind of pissed off. I would have at that point wrote him in even if it wasn't a write-in. Yeah,
that's fair. Luckily in New York, we don't have any kind of rules over our write-ins, so I can always write in whoever I want to. A couple elections ago, I wrote in just like a whole bunch of random libertarians for a bunch of random things.
Oh yeah, for the Republican primary ballot, I wrote in Justin Amash.
Nice. He's close enough. And drive down. I definitely I'm a fan of targeting the voting reform as a strategy for an organization like Project Liberal. It definitely, in my opinion, is one of the biggest hurdles that any kind of reform group is going to have in their success, is just not ever being able to win an election if it's always a gamed system. Do you guys have any plans at reaching out to the sitting like representatives that have already won the game system beforehand?
There's definitely going to be some accountability there with the scorecard, because it's going to be very difficult to sort of lie your way through when we have something that can something to compare you against, because we're going to write on certain things like how well you uphold democracy, or how well you uphold freedom of speech. Those kind of components will be something that with sources that will be able to show, and that'll force accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's definitely worked out well in New Hampshire, in my opinion, with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. I think it's who does their Liberty scorecard up there for the different representatives. What I find most interesting with that is comparing their list against some other organizations that call themselves like liberty leaning, and being like, even the other Republican organizations are saying that these people are an F. How are they a libertarian?
There's also going to be times where some organization can have a blind spot, or there's going to be a time where they may have some bias, or like what we're probably going to use is an AI model, but with a lot of human oversight.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I went pretty hard against Young Americans for Liberty at a time that I will say was about 2 leadership cycles ago, and nothing I'm about to say do I think applies to the current organization of Young Americans for Liberty. But they were more focused on the win percentage than anything else, really, and so they would lower the bar pretty heavily for someone that was guaranteed a victory. And especially when you're talking New Hampshire state house races, a good chunk of those races are unopposed and so small, and it's very easy to just pull that district or gauge public support for a candidate and realize that they're going to win. And so they were just handed out endorsements so that in, I think it was probably the 2020 cycle, they had like an 80% win rate, which is crazy for a liberty organization. But
they're beefing the numbers. They're like, Yeah, we're definitely not going to pull punches that way.
Good. Yeah, because I think, win percentage definitely is a good thing to have, but in an organization like PL, it's not a driving factor where it really was. Like, there was a bunch of donors that were like, all right, you can either have millions of dollars or you cannot have millions of dollars, and this percentage needs to be above this number. It's a lot easier to sell out when there's somebody offering to buy in that specific way, where the donors to an organization like PL are going to care significantly more about movement of philosophy and ideals compared to anything like just, we endorsed a bunch of people that won. Like, whoop-de-doo, that normally is a bad thing in our circles.
It's definitely a balance you have to strike as well. You also don't want the standards to be so high that no one will ever be able to touch it.
Right. It's valid.
But from the internal stuff I've looked at the sort of qualifications for the scorecard, they're very reasonable. And it'll basically have enough of that information on the page that it'll tell the candidate what they did wrong. So if they wanted to, say, improve their score, they would be able to do something.
That's good. I feel like there are quite a few people, maybe not in Congress. This number is pretty small, but in a lot of state houses and below, there are so many people there that really think that they're doing the right thing. They're there to serve the public and represent their constituents and try to make the country better. And they're usually very patriotic, and they really believe that their state and their country and their town is the greatest place in the world to live, and they're really trying to be good people. And something like this, like a scorecard with what you're talking about with the actionable kind of critiques, I think is very helpful for a lot of those people who are actually just trying to represent the people as best as possible. And when you show them a scorecard, it's like, you might think you're an A, but you're actually like a C plus because you said all of these things, but when push came to shove, you voted this way, and you slipped up here, and nobody really agrees with this shit. I don't know why you keep saying it. It gives them something to actually move forward with, compared to what most organizations in our circles do, including my own, with reporting on most of the corruption and scandals and bureaucracy and bullshit. I'm not really offering help to anyone that I'm covering. If congressperson votes badly and I write a story about it, it's not
just pure grill.
Yeah, I'm not helping them at all. I'm just using them for the content at that point, which is a terrible way to say it as I'm saying it out loud.
It happens.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, actually allowing them to grow and change and be a little bit better, I think is
it's also just so for transparency, because we don't want to give someone an F and they think they're a good liberal, and our scorecard said otherwise, and they have no clue why.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone sees their favorite politician and they see they didn't get the score that they would hope. We're able to say why that they didn't have a high of a score as.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not because you guys are dumb. It's because they are not actually as liberal as they say that they are. Yeah. Without that transparency, it just becomes, oh, well, I'm a fan of Bernie Sanders. You give Bernie Sanders a D, so I don't like you guys.
Yeah, I can't really quite get into any scores because it's one of those things that we haven't fully tested it out. So any sort of score I'd sort of try to give a politician would at best just be a kind of guess.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was just kind of giving an example. I'm definitely interested to see what the scores are and what it looks like when it comes out.
Yeah, though we're actually not just as something you mentioned earlier about us being a pack. We actually transitioned to it being a C4.
Oh, okay.
Though we're probably gonna the organization is probably gonna split to a pack and a C4.
Nice.
So the C4 is mainly gonna focus on education, and the pack is gonna be for actually supporting candidates.
Okay, that makes sense. I like the organizations that actually know how to use those structures correctly. Cough. There's a couple of packs in the movement that don't know what a pack is for. That makes sense. I incorrectly use pack as a blanket term sometimes over organizations that objectively are not packs. I've gotten myself into trouble on that one a few times. But I'm excited to see what you guys are able to do. Tell me about some of the people that you guys have on like the board and the steering committee.
Well, we on our website we sort of list everyone in we list the directors, the advisors, and then the steering committee. The steering committee are the people I know the most about. Like Micah Irfan, he's a big he's very big in sort of like the neoliberal space. He does a lot of YIMBY advocatism, and we got Jason Cooper. He does a lot of stuff sort of on the Discord side, and he's like he was the one that actually got me to start volunteering.
Oh, nice.
I didn't like sort of start like a volunteer. I was initially just sort of hanging on their Discord server. Jason Cooper sort of gives me a message. I'm like, oh no, who's this? But no, he actually offers to sort of get me plugged in and figure out something I can do. And then before long, I'm editing videos and then starting to run for the steering committee.
Nice.
We have David Wiley. He does a lot of stuff with Ukraine advocacy and advocating that we have to make sure Russia loses this war, and that this war it's horrifying. So he does a lot in that sort of area.
I'm definitely I feel like the Ukraine stuff is some of what's gotten you guys a lot of attention, both positive and negative, and I can definitely agree that all war, but especially seeing some of what's coming out of this one, it is one of the most gruesome wars in a while, and you kind of don't think that kind of stuff is still happening in 2025 in just like cities and towns and places that people were peacefully living a decade ago is wild. We've kind of gotten desensitized to it out in the desert, not to just be callous of it, but it's 20 years of deserts getting blown up. We know that's going on, that's happening. There's something, to try to not sound too racist about it, but there's something different about it being in like Europe and like
it looks
a
more
populated
like
city. Yeah, and
it looks like it could be your town. It looks. I mean, you're in New York City, so it may be a little different for you, but a lot of these towns, they look like they could be a town like I just drive to, and it's just horrifying.
Well, that is one of the things that has boggled my mind. Is like it's Odessa and Moscow and places I've been in Russia and places that are the size of New York City getting shelled on just like a random Tuesday. And that it is definitely even from that perspective, it's weird to see skyscrapers falling in just an ongoing war. We've done such a good job of doing the 1984 model of isolating the fighting into a couple of areas that nobody cares about and won't actually break anything that costs too much to repair. And then now all of a sudden we're dropping skyscrapers in a war that's just continuing and being allowed to continue. And it definitely is throwing people for a loop.
Yeah, the sort of invasion, it's just so disgusting. It's definitely a big issue for Project Liberal. We have to protect these small democracies. They may not be perfect and they're kind of fragile, but they're worth preserving, and it's very important to say, yeah, although they may not be sort of these perfect libertarian paradises, they are vastly, vastly, vastly superior to the alternative. That is definitely something we have to hammer home on. We have to look at sort of compared to alternatives, which has been sort of sadly an issue with the liberty movement, where they won't compare sort of to reasonable alternatives a lot of the time. They're fine if sort of the institutions that we have sort of they aren't treated with the best care, if that means it seems like you're going to get a win out of it.
Yeah.
These institutions are very important.
Yeah, I think that definitely there is plenty of critiques to be made of Ukraine, especially at the moment under current leadership, and it's this really difficult road to walk, and like line to kind of stay on. Of you can't let just blatant, just horrible things for democracy in Ukraine go unchecked, because then any criticism of Ukraine, you get labeled a Russian asset and a Putin sympathizer, and like that is incorrect. But then you don't want to go the other direction, like you're saying, of, well, Ukraine is so bad that anything that makes that government crumble, even if it's Russia, then it's okay, because that's also dumb.
The way Russian propaganda sort of works, or at least the way they try to do it, is that they sort of latch onto something that I would probably say is like a sort of legitimate criticism, but then they'd basically poison the well on it. Like when it comes to sort of sending money to Ukraine, sadly, a lot of those sort of voices end up being poisoned with the idea that Ukraine basically provoked Russia into doing what it did, which to me, I sadly don't think is kind of bogus, and it's just a talking point.
I would definitely give very little blame to Ukraine for starting this. There's very legitimate arguments to, the West, quote unquote, like NATO, instigating a good chunk of this and bearing a good amount of the blame, but very little of that is Ukraine's fault. They, at least from my perspective, they really have been just trying to not get bombed by either side. Has seemed to be the main objective from Ukraine. Is just like, can we just not have a war? Like, whatever makes everybody happy. Let's just not war anymore, please.
The way I think of it is like this: who are they joining NATO to protect themselves from?
Yeah,
sadly, it's the country doing the invasion right now. I mean, Poland, in the 90s, they threatened to develop nuclear bombs if they didn't get NATO membership. I would prefer there not be nuclear bombs in Poland, or at least not too many. Like, I would prefer there be as little of those as possible.
Yeah, unfortunately, at this point, I think we're past the like critical mass of nukes in the world, that the amount of nuclear armed countries I don't think necessarily matters, because it only takes 2 to kill all of us, and those 2 already exist. Like, it's already more than those 2. We have at least 2 nuclear armed enemies, as well as all of our allies, and just us and Russia and humanity, or just us and North Korea. It doesn't really matter too much if Ukraine's or any,
Yeah, I've heard due to air defense systems that the actual casualty numbers for a war like that have actually gone down a bit, at least since the 90s. But it would still basically, all the countries in the West would end at that point, and they wouldn't rise. They wouldn't rise again. It would be separate nations that would rise out of that.
Yeah.
At that point, or at least with how long it would take to recover. So it would be.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Basically, it would probably end civilization for at least a couple decades as we rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just finished, or I'm not actually done with it yet, but I don't know if I'm going to finish it, but I got to like season 6 or 7 or whatever of the 100 recently, and the backstory there is, all the nukes in the world get set off by an AI that thinks that the best way to save the planet is to kill all the humans, and just completely wipes out the whole, pretty much everything. At least they think. It starts off with a bunch of people going from a space shuttle back down to Earth, thinking that there's no humans on Earth, and then there are still some people that were able to survive it in small pockets, but for the most part, just completely wipes out humanity and definitely wipes out civilization. Completely breaks down language and everything else, and it's a interesting backstory.
Yeah, something that would probably kill even more than just the nukes themselves would be the winter that happens afterward.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose like 2 or 3 years of crop harvests, a lot of people aren't gonna make it just because they won't have food.
Definitely. There are a lot of dangers involved in starting a nuclear holocaust. So let's try to.
We would prefer not to have those.
Yeah. I remember when the war first started, and the U.S. looked like it was going to get involved very quickly, and Russia threatened nukes, like an immediate response. And we all thought World War III was starting and it was going to go to nukes quickly. And it was like, is there a next week?
I was less worried about that, but I definitely thought Ukraine was going to fall by that in like a week. I did not expect them to repel the sort of northern front.
Yeah,
I thought they would have. I thought their sort of hurrah was sort of they would look really good on sort of the reels, but I wasn't sure they were gonna make it. But they made it actually. I was very shocked by that. Although,
it's a pretty concrete historical fact that when you invade Russia, it's a bad idea, and that idea was cemented back when Ukraine was part of Russia the last 2 times, and so it's just kind of a dumb idea. No matter whether you're coming for the East or the West, it's a dumb idea.
Yeah, there's definitely a large reason for the sort of issues that a lot of armies have had when invading Russia was Russia almost always had a population advantage. Russia really doesn't have that anymore. They're not like this young populated country anymore. They're getting really old, and their men sort of die when they're 50, sadly. It's like really depressing.
Yeah. Somehow the alcohol intake has remained the same, but somehow the effects of the alcohol have seemed to be drastically different throughout the centuries. Napoleon was fighting just as shit-faced drunk Russians as the Ukrainians are now, but there's some drastic differences in the effects of
it. Yeah, a lot of stuff that happens at war is just wild because it's like it's so modern. Like I saw someone piloting a drone with a damn Steam Deck, and I have one like just to the side of me. It's like insane.
Yeah, it's very weird what we can do now, and this kind of using TikTok and Twitter and various social medias to report on / basically inform on the different sides.
Yeah, it's just insane. As well as I've heard that the North Koreans, they got addicted to internet porn immediately. When I heard that, I was like, oh my god. They immediately just broke down.
You can't, and I think to bring this full circle, it's a great show of proof for the ideals of liberalism that it does not matter how strictly you enforce a rule and try to mold a society of people in a specific way in certain sets of morals and everything. It doesn't work. It's never gonna work. You can never legislate morality into where your people all of a sudden don't care about sex and porn and drugs and alcohol and all these different things. It's never gonna work.
Yeah, we make it in our values that the government can't be your central planner. It can't be your master. It has to serve you if it does exist.
Yeah, I think it's like the 2025 version of all of our soldiers getting addicted to like heroin in Vietnam. Yeah, it's just like we went over there and we're like, wait, you can do what? You can buy now? Or even more accurately, a bunch of our soldiers getting STDs in Vietnam.
Yeah.
You cannot resist the some urges, and you send people off to die. You're gonna be in a different mindset, man.
Yeah, if you think you can die, you're gonna die next week. Then I mean, you might as well live for that week.
Yeah,
I mean, why not?
Yeah, does it really matter if you have the clap when you die in the trenches?
I mean, it's one of those things where you're probably not thinking like that,
right?
You're not thinking about that kind of stuff at all. You're not thinking about what happens a month from now if you think you're gonna die tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So give me like a elevator pitch of why people watching should join up with the with Project Liberal and help you guys out, work with you.
And basically anyone that wants a sort of broad coalition that will consistently fight for liberty, Project Liberal is really the only organization that's really offering that. Like a common sort of liberty coalition that's been floated around, I mean, for a very long time, ever since the 90s, was sort of a liberty sort of conservative coalition. Mm-hmm. And if you really think about it, every time it's happened, it's always sort of broken down. Especially because I think it's called fusionism, if I remember correctly. It's that sort of fusionist sort of coalition always just breaks down eventually. Usually because the Republican Party is never going to let sort of libertarians run the show. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
In a sort of liberal coalition, the different components, the different sort of liberal components, like social liberals, classical liberals, liberal conservatives, they're all sort of equals in this coalition.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to dominate one another in that way. So if you want a coalition that will sort of be consistent in that way, then Project Liberal is definitely the organization for you.
I like it. I am a big proponent of coalition building in every facet and in any way that you can do it, especially if you're able to kind of bridge some of those party gaps and bring in people that normally aren't able to work together for various reasons. I was a big advocate for liberty unity as a movement back in 2020, 2021. As it would have been 21, we started off with that kind of rhetoric within the party just to try to be able to make the LP the kind of organization that could do what you're talking about. And we failed, in my opinion. And at this point, I don't think that a party has the capability of being a broad coalition, because you have to maintain some level of purity while also being welcoming to people that don't pass that purity test. And you have to be able to do both at the same time, and you can't as one organization, as one party. And the left and the right do a really good job of utilizing different like NGOs and PACs and C4s and C3s and corporations and consulting companies and all these different things interwoven and inbred into this mess of organizations to be able to bring people in, to be able to train people, be able to give people jobs, doing various things, and move people around through a movement that the party only matters if you're building infrastructure for the actual party and want to do those internal party jobs, like specifically being like a party secretary or party treasurer or something like that. You can do that. But for most of the rest of the movement, the party itself only matters every November. Most Democrat activists that you talk to, their main focus is not the Democratic Party. It's democratic activism through BLM or No New Jails or the Sunrise Movement or Extinction Rebellion or any Fight for 15 or whatever David Hogue's like anti-gun organization is. All of these other organizations, one of those is going to be their main focus, and then another one is probably going to be their second to main focus, and you're down into fifth or sixth or seventh before they start going to like, oh yeah, nice. Every once in a while, I'll go to my county party meeting, the monthly meeting. Yeah, I go to those every month. But that's not what they're on calls with doing, a bunch of work, doing editing videos or making graphics or planning marches. It's not for the party. It's for all of these other organizations that are able to do all of the other work so that the party can focus on being the party. And the Liberty Movement has a bunch of these other organizations, but we don't have that
cohesion,
interwoven, inbred web. Yeah, the cohesion that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's the main issue is that. I mean, I know that people like Thomas Massey I've heard that he's basically said he would consider running as a libertarian if he thought he could win.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that I think that's kind of kept the Liberty Movement away from uniting in that sort of way is that there's currently kind of like two idea strategies where it's either join the duopoly or in a third party, and neither are that great.
Mm-hmm.
What I always loved about Project Liberal was it was sort of a third option.
Mm-hmm.
It was although I very much support the LP. I really like the new chair, at least personally.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I definitely think there's an importance in sort of taking that third option.
Yeah, I definitely did the same thing a few years ago with You Are the Power, and I stepped away from a lot of my internal party obligations and positions and stepped into a few different roles in a couple of different organizations instead. And there's a few different reasons for that, but it enabled me to talk to a lot more people about what I do. A couple of months ago we ran like pledge drive thing, not a fundraising, but just to sign a pledge. It was called the Human Respect Pledge, and it was very simple, like 4 short paragraphs of like 2 or 3 sentences each of just basic. I believe in human respect, and I got all of my friends and family and former coworkers and a bunch of other random people to sign this pledge because it's a very simple, very straightforward, like this is what we care about. And most people care about that kind of stuff. And that's what we work on at You Are the Power, is the stuff that most people, is just a no-brainer for them. That, like, of course, this is just crazy that the situation happened. We need to make it right. We don't do, all the other random stuff that gets into the weeds of issues very often. And it's just so much easier to be able to talk to people about core values over policy positions or candidates joining a party is just
that's definitely something that sort of kept Project Liberal together. We have a common sort of pool of values that we all care about. And although we may not have the exact same ends, we're definitely bound together by these values. That's why we sort of have that page for those values.
Yeah. Actually, that's the page that's currently open on my other screen. It's a good set of values, I think. And it's very similarly the kind of stuff that most people, not all people, obviously there are some people who aren't even bad people that just don't agree with this, right? We need the government needs to babysit us, and none of these things are accurate. Those people exist, but most people think that truth exists and it matters, whether you're on the right or the left or in between or don't care about politics or love politics. Everyone can resonate with that sentence being a thing. That's one of the things I love about we have our sponsor. Actually, I was just about to click this up anyway. Blood of Tyrants is so much fun because no matter who you're talking to, most people think that there is a tyrant in power somewhere in the either political or quasi-political sphere that is doing bad things, and who can appreciate a guillotine joke about the tyrants in power. Everyone agrees with that. There is not a person on the planet that doesn't believe that one of the two candidates for president was a tyrant, and they both were in power. That just it's a blanket thing that everyone can agree with. And I don't really care which tyrant you think is who. Just buy the wine. Like that's all I care about. I care that you like the idea of it and you buy the wine. It's very good wine. You guys should all buy the wine. It's great. But to put that into the slightly more political things, it doesn't matter who you think is telling the truth and who you think is telling lies in the mainstream media today. Most people can resonate with truth as a thing that exists and that we need to protect, and it coupled with really protecting free speech and making sure that we're not picking and choosing the winners of that truth too much. Most people agree with that.
Yeah, freedom of speech is definitely a big one for us.
I think that was one of the main issues that really brought me into not brought me into the movement per se, but got me fired up about it and caring about it. And seeing a dire need to get involved and actually do something, because the Second Amendment was always a big thing, and that was probably the main thing that you could see was getting attacked on a day-to-day basis. And I grew up upstate New York. We own guns and we can own guns, but it's it's still New York State. It's about 6 to 9 months of a background check and a whole bunch of hoops and everything just to buy a pistol. I was very clear to me growing up, especially kind of an absolutist on the issue, that if I can't own a bazooka, then the Second Amendment has been infringed on. But you didn't really see the other ones getting infringed on in real time, at least at my age. I wasn't watching people get canceled and censored over the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. I wasn't really seeing a whole lot of that. I wasn't seeing Occupy Wall Street get shut down as much. Wasn't really watching too much of that stuff. And so I just kind of grew up thinking okay, we need to protect the Second Amendment. We need to get that back to where it was. But the other five, the first five are doing pretty good. We can say whatever we want. I've never had a soldier show up at my house and demand to stay in my guest room. I think we're doing good.
A lot of the infringements on those rights are silent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then
stuff like the Patriot Act or FISA 702 or a lot of the statements that I heard from both like Tim Walz and Donald Trump on a sort of freedom of speech, it was horrifying. And it's something that we have to stand against immediately, because that kind of rhetoric can't be considered acceptable in any circumstance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I wasn't expecting it, and like I said, I didn't really think that it was happening, and nobody was really paying that much attention to what the possible outcomes, other than Ron Paul, obviously, of FISA and some of the other aspects of the Patriot Act and some of these other things, where now we do have codified into law. Even like the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act is something that I did a whole video about back when it passed. Good intentions, great name, great ideas, but what it actually did was make a law that said, if you even think about doing something, even if you don't tell anybody about it, you're technically committing a crime. If that thing you thought about doing was racially based and really gruesome, you committed a crime. And if you tell somebody that you thought about that, then you definitely committed a crime. And if you even you don't even have to go about actually trying to do the thing. Normally the legal line is drawn at you have to at least attempt or do a crime. With that one, it's no, you just have to think about it or tell somebody that you kind of want to do it. And sure, to the best of my knowledge, no one's actually been arrested and charged with violating this bill since it was passed, but it's there.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those issues where there's a lot of laws have a lot of like theoretical ideas where, I mean, if you really have followed the letter of the law, there's a lot of very authoritarian laws. It is definitely interesting to think about how often the sort of spirit of the law and how it'll actually be enforced. Because although it may criminalize, like, say, thinking about it, it could be the case that they're likely not going to ever charge you for thinking about it. Even if they knew that you thought about it, they're probably not going to charge you.
Not yet.
Yeah, I definitely hope that no one is like sort of charged for like thinking about a crime, because everyone sort of thinks about crime, if you get what I mean. Not as in like wanting to do it, but like they think about crime.
Yeah.
You don't want to think about it. You don't want the sort of idea of thinking about it to be a crime in itself.
Yeah, thought crimes are definitely a really slippery slope and a dangerous area, for sure. And watching one thing that I think is consistent through both real history and fictional versions of totalitarianism, whether you're talking like 1984 or some of the other classics of that area, it's very rarely the people that put the tyranny into place that are the tyrants. It's very often a very gradual slope and then just a drop fall into tyranny, but utilizing a whole bunch of precedent and laws that were already set into place. Obviously you have certain uprisings that completely defy this, like fascist Italy. They just kind of came in, took over, rewrote all the laws. But most of the time, it's even if it's the same party or the same kind of group, it's the successors that really do the crazy shit. Like, I don't think Trump is going to be the next Hitler. He doesn't have it in him. He doesn't want to be. I don't believe it. I don't think.
I think he's too stupid to be one of those people. So
also that.
But yeah. Like the way I think about it is, like, I know someone Russian on the Project Liberal server basically said that the sort of speech laws that Russia has on the books right now that have been used to arrest Ukrainian protesters that are in Russia, those laws were initially used against neo-Nazis, and the sort of liberals in Russia were cheering it on. And that's so scary to think about, because it's like, yeah, it's not like some theoretical thing where it's only like in theory that the speech laws may be used against you. In Russia, that's a reality. Those speech laws were used against those people.
Mm-hmm. And they always will be. Like, that's the thing. I think that's like the crux of liberalism, is that no matter how good your intentions were in the beginning, every attempt to legislate morality is going to wind up problematic. And whether you take that to the end conclusion of anarchy or not is irrelevant. You have to like, everyone in the movement, I think, or most people in the movement at least, understand that you just can't do it. It doesn't work out. It will never work out, and we need to stop trying.
It's important to think about liberty as like this. Liberty is not going to create sort of a perfect utopia. It's never going to be this sort of perfect ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very important to realize that liberty is definitely better than all the alternatives.
Yes. By far. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on. This is great. Tell people where they can find you and follow along with you, or get involved with Project Liberal.
To get involved in Project Liberal, just sort of go to our website and then go to the ACT button. Then you could subscribe, donate, volunteer, or get a membership. My Twitter, it's just at Tommy Bunchanums. It's not really a super like Project Liberal oriented sort of Twitter account. It's mostly just like, honestly, for a while, just a larking account. And it probably won't be sort of immediately me for a very long time.
Fair enough.
If you want to sort of get sort of the Twitter account, sort of Twitter-like account with my actual name on it, go follow me on Blue Sky. It's just look up Tommy Cruzer and you'll find me. Hopefully, I can post there more, but I just forget.
I hear that. I also have an account there that I very rarely use. Guys, make sure that you are hitting that like button and following Free Speech Media, so you're getting all of the great content that we're putting out every single week. And share this around to all of your friends and family, and even strangers. Just hand them a flash drive with this video on it and say, "Watch this. It's great." We just got to get the word out there. We'll be back here next week with the hilarious author, actor, and comedian Lou Perez. Same place, same time. So don't miss out. Until then, keep up the fight.